Hi there, Terry back again. Hope I find you all well, and welcome to my All-Star Western video. This was going to be Jonah Hex Part 2, but he's not in this bit, well, apart from the t-shirt. This is All-Star Western number 1 to 9, and the first one features Powell Smith, Volume 2, number 1 there. It's a character created by Donald Clough Cameron and Carmine Infantino. And going off on a bit of a tangent, I thought this was interesting, but sad. Donald Cameron was born on the 21st of December 1905, and he died on the 17th of November 1954, so only 48 years old, so miles too young, obviously. So as well as his co-creation of Powell Smith, he also co-created Toyman with Ed Dobrukta and Liberty Bell with Chuck Winter. But more importantly, as far as I'm concerned, he co-created Alfred Pennyworth with Bob Kane. Alfred being one of my most favourite characters, and I wish they'd bring him back. But anyway, back to this one, number 1, September 1970 cover date. The character Powell Smith was first seen in Detective Comics number 151 back in September 1949. This, the cover story, Return of the Fadeaway Villain, first appeared in Western Comics number 73, February 1959, and it was written by Gardner Fox with art by the wonderful Carmine Infantino. There was also a one-page prose story inside here written by Jerry Conway, entitled Dust Under the Whispering Sun. The second story was by John Broome, and again by the art by Carmine Infantino, and the inks were by Joe Geller. And that was called Gun Duel at Copper Creek. And more trivia, if you could stand it. This story initially was going to be a Hopalong Cassidy story, but his book was cancelled, so Powell Smith became the main character. There you go, number 1. Then, at number 2, we have a lovely Neal Adams cover. There we are. And the first story, Outlaw, is called Draw Death, and written by Rob Kanigher. Excuse me one second. Excuse me, I had a bit of a coughing fit there. First appearance of Rick Wilson and his father Samuel, as I said, written by Rob Kanigher, and the art was by Tony DeZuniga. And this was also the first appearance in this story of El Diablo and his horse Lucifer. The second story, The Devil Has Two Faces, the writer and creator of El Diablo, Robert Kanigher, and the art was by Gray Morrow. But he wasn't the co-creator, that was Tony DeZuniga, who did the art for the first story. And more trivia, in this story, Dick Giordino and Gil Kane appear. And the second story also has the first appearance of Lazarus Lane, the first of the 3 incarnations of El Diablo, along with Wise Owl, his companion. We then have number 3 from Jan 1971 cover date, and another lovely Neal Adams cover. And we have Rick Wilson again as the Outlaw in Death Deals the Cards, written by Robert Kanigher and art by Gil Kane. The El Diablo story was Call Him Satan, Call Him Saint, again by Robert Kanigher, and the art this time by Gray Morrow. The definitive directory of the DC Universe number 7, in error, credits this issue as El Diablo's first appearance. Obviously, it wasn't. It was the one I just showed you. Then we have another Neal Adams cover, number 4, March 1971. And the Outlaw story in this was No Coffin for a Killer, Robert Kanigher and Gil Kane again. And then there was a couple of El Diablo stories in this one. Satan with Spurs by Robert Kanigher and Gray Morrow. And then a tale that was entitled White Man's Gift. And that was written, penciled and inked by the wonderful Joe Kubert. Then we have another Neal Adams cover, number 5, and this is May 1971, and the Outlaw story was The Hangman Never Loses by Robert Kanigher, and the art this time by Jim Aparo. and this was the last appearance of Rick and Samuel Wilson. The El Diablo story was The Devil Rides for Vengeance, with Robert Kanigher writing, and the art by Alan Weiss and Dick Giordino. And we're nearly there with number 6. And here's another lovely classic Neal Adams cover. And the outlaw in this story is Billy the Kid. And like it says on the cover, Billy the Kid Killer. This was written by John Albano and the art by Tony DeZuniga. Then a tale in here of Wild Bill Hickok entitled Town Tamer, and that was the art by Gil Kane, and I believe he did the story as well in this one. And then a very eerie tale again by Gil Kane, along with Denny O'Neill, and the art also by Gil Kane, with ink in by Tony DeZuniga, and this was called The Night of the Snake. And then we have number 7, and this time the cover is by Tony DeZuniga. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing his name wrong, but I'm just as it's spelt. This was an extra size, as you see, 25-cent issue, and so a few more stories inside. Billy the Kid was in this again, with Bullet for a Gambler, written by John Albano, art by Tony DeZuniga. Then there was an older story called The Challenge of the Black Warrior by starring Davy Crockett. The writer was unknown, but the artist was John Prentice. And this was originally in Frontier Fighters #1 from September 1955. And from the same book, after another reprinted tale with Buffalo Bill Cody in The Tenderfoot Caravan. Again, the artist was unknown, the writer was unknown, but the art was by Joe Kubert. And then the El Diablo story was The Gypsy Curse, and that was written by Robert Kanigher, and the art by Alan Weiss and Dick Giordino. And just a couple of issues to go. And we have number 8, cover again by Tony DeZuniga, November 1971 cover date. And this was Billy the Kid, the Scavenger title. The writer John Albano and the art by Tony DeZuniga. And then we have some more old stories. Buffalo Bill Cody in The Magic Thunderstruck, unknown writer again, but art by Joe Kubert. And then from Frontier Fighters #3, February 1956, that story. And then we had an older Powell Smith story, The Sheriff's Birthday Party, and that was from Western Comics, #78, December 1959, and that was written by Gardner Fox, and the art was by Carmine Infantino. There was another story called Timberwolf, that was art by Gil Kane and Tony DeZuniga, and this was an unknown writer, and I'm not sure if it was a reprint or not. There's no info whatsoever in the DC database, so I can't say anything about that. And the last story in this issue was a Davy Crockett story. It was called The Renegade Fur Traders, another unknown writer, and it was art by John Prentice, and it was from Frontier Fighters #6, August 1956. And last but not least, number 9, which looks very much like number 10 as far as the framing work is concerned. This was January 1972, cover by Tony DeZuniga, and this was a complete reprint issue. Powell Smith's story was by Gardner Fox and Carmine Infantino. It was called The Menace of the Flaming Totem Pole, and that was from Western Comics #70, August 1958. Then we had Buffalo Bill Cody with The Ambush of the Overland Stage, and again, writer unknown, but the art by Joe Kubert. It wouldn't surprise me if it wasn't Joe Kubert wrote it, but there you go. All of those ones were the unknown writer. From Frontier Fighters #2, December 1955. And then originally in a comic book called Jimmy Wakely, I assume is a well-known American cowboy on TV, not something that came over to the UK. This was volume 1, #4 from April 1950, and it was called The Town Jesse James Couldn't Rob, and it was written by John Broome, and the art by Frank Frazetta. And another one from the Jimmy Wakely comic book, volume 1, number 8, and that was from December 1950, and that was called The Fortune Nobody Wanted, and that was again written by Gardner Fox, and the art was by Carmine Infantino and John Giunta. And there we have it. The last print is pretty recent, according to because there's a Backlash story in here as well. And the last is pretty recent, this one, considering this book is dated 1972. The Backlash story, Revenge Part 1, comes from Backlash number 6 from September 1969. So only like 3 years later. The writers were Denny O'Neil and Sergio Aragonés, or Aragonés, I should say. And the art was by Nick Cardy. Part 2 is in number 10, which I showed in the previous video. So thank you for watching. If you got to the end, please like and subscribe and comment. Please comment. I'd like to know what I'm doing right or wrong or indifferently. See you all again soon. Thanks for watching.